Minister, does your government have plans to provide new and better protections for young workers in the wake of the wage theft scandal in and around Wollongong?
In terms of wage theft, I mean, I would have thought one of the more significant issues of wage theft was the union movement contracting out the entitlements of Sunday workers at the expense of those who work during the week. That's probably one, and I read a very
Treasurer, my question was about protecting young
report.
workers in the Illawarra and the wage theft scandal there. Does your government have plans to provide new and better protections for young workers? Yes or no?
The best protection and the best support we can provide for young people across this state is a job.
Well, only if they're paid properly.
What was that?
Only if they're paid properly.
Well, we are, I mean, and I would also look particularly at the support that we provide the public service here in New South Wales. And when I look around other states at the moment who are not in a strong financial position, when you have stagnant wage growth, particularly in the private sector, we're providing greater support to public servants across New South Wales, allowing wage increases up to 2.5%. They can exceed 2.5% in circumstances where savings are found. But clearly, from my perspective, as Treasurer, I have a strong focus on the budget, but I importantly have a strong focus on the economy, and the decisions that we make today have a significant impact on employment opportunities. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the country at 5%. It's almost a whole percentage point below the rest of the country. We have created close to 400,000 jobs since 2011. But in terms of, so we certainly want to provide protections for young workers. The best we can do for them is for young people across the state, is to provide opportunities. Job opportunities come from economic growth. I'd make this point that we are not only leading the way on economic growth right now in New South Wales, 0.5 percentage point of that economic growth comes directly from the pipeline of public infrastructure that we are building. And then I look at the jobs growth that's coming out of projects like the WestConnex, 10,000 jobs from the WestConnex project itself. So I'm very proud of our government's job record, and the concern that I have when it comes to wage theft are, and I've spoken about this in question time, particularly around the fact that we have many young workers out there on a Sunday who the SDA are out there trading away their wages, and they are worse. I mean, you've got Bill Shorten,
the Fair Work Act specifically leaves child labour protection laws to the states. Now, given the extensively documented exploitation of young workers in the Illawarra, why won't you act on this issue? It's totally within the New South Wales government's capacity to do so. What do you have against protecting young workers?
I don't. I want to help.
Will you do something about it?
I want to help young workers, and that's why I get bemused when I see some of the ongoings in respect of the SDA and what they're doing to young workers, vulnerable young workers in places like McDonald's and KFC, where you've got the alternate Prime Minister out there making claims, unfortunately, about penalty rates when unionised staff are actually worse off under those penalties. So that concerns me.
Well,
now I will, but
well,
I want to answer the
to
question. I do want to answer the question. So I might pass to Ms. Telfer if there's anything further to say in respect of
the wage theft for young workers in the Illawarra.
Nothing specific from New South Wales. I think it's important to remind people in the committee that in the end of 2009, took effect in 2010, New South Wales referred its industrial relations powers to the federal government, and that includes all private sector workplaces. I note
except child labour laws are left to the states, Ms. Telfer. You know that.
I understand that. But in the primary responsibility is with the Fair Work Act, and I do note that in the federal parliament this week there were discussions about vulnerable workers legislation,
Which Labor supported.
which Labor which has been
Franchise
a
workers,
matter
yes.
of great debate. That's about franchises, and I think that's very important and something that I understand most jurisdictions are supporting. The work around the Vulnerable Workers Bill, because that will give additional powers to the Fair Work Ombudsman to investigate and bring matters
Well, Ms.
to the
Telfer, my
appropriate
question was,
conclusion.
what is New South Wales doing to protect young workers, not providing a cheer squad for whatever the Commonwealth might be doing?
I obviously cannot talk from a policy perspective.
Well, you can just
but I
agree
can
to the
talk
point
about
about whether or
the
not the
matters
New
that
South
we-
Wales government is doing anything.
But I can talk about what...
Well, to the point of order, she's being
The point of order
non-responsive.
hasn't even been made.
Well, the witness
Is
is
there a
not
point-
being
is there a point-
responsive.
Well, I had taken the point of order. She's entitled to answer the question. She's being generally irrelevant, and you should allow her to answer rather than being rude and interrupting her all the time. It's quite
Well,
unnecessary.
Mr. Chair, if only the witness would answer the question.
Mr. Telfer is answering the question. I provided a very detailed response that was clearly on point. Mr. Telfer is going into further information, and we only have a short period of time to talk about the industrial relations component, which is a key component of my portfolio responsibilities.
We'll move on.
So I'd like
Ms. Telfer, with your answers relevant to New South Wales.
I'll keep my answer brief and to the point.
You should make
As you would be aware, we have a team of inspectors in New South Wales Industrial Relations. We are particularly focused in that unit about providing information and advice to employers and to employees, but making sure that employers can, in fact, undertake their rights and responsibilities. We also have an Aboriginal education unit, and they are out with that community, making sure that people in that community know their rights and responsibilities. But our focus has been about making sure that we can get employers to undertake their rights and responsibilities, and so that they do succeed and don't fail. We provide a range of advice to government on a range of different matters. It's not my place to provide commentary on policy decisions. I can provide advice about what we do in New South Wales Industrial Relations.
Thanks.
Move on to Mr. Searle.
Treasurer, given that leave, of course, is a working entitlement,
Yep.
will you commit to expanding domestic violence leave for public sector workers from 5 days to 10 days paid leave? And if not, why won't you do so?
So, thanks for the question. Obviously, that's unfortunately becoming more of a relevant issue in both New South Wales and around Australia today. So, from my understanding, the current arrangements provide for, in the public service, domestic violence leave in circumstances once personal or sick leave has been exhausted. I understand that the Minister for Family and Community Services is looking into this. There's been discussions at COAG. We would, from a state's perspective, strongly support initiatives that enable and support victims of domestic violence to continue to participate in the workforce. The directive from Treasury specifically on this point is important, and that is that agencies should apply the following provisions. One, leave entitlements provided for in sick leave, family community service leave, sick leave to care for a family member, that's also referred to as personal and carers leave, may be used by staff members experiencing domestic violence, so they can get access to that. So it's not that they're not entitled to take leave prior to that point.
But will you increase it? It's 5 days now. Will you increase it to 10 days?
We've all read the circular.
You've all read the circular.
We've all read the circular.
I've got a copy here.
Okay, great. On that front, that is something that the New South Wales domestic violence under the New South Wales government takes very seriously. We are always looking at new opportunities where we can provide greater support.
Okay. Well,
it's not for me at budget estimates to be making new policy decisions on behalf of the government. What I can say is that this is something, this is an area that the government has taken a key interest in. We provided expanded support for victims of domestic violence in this year's budget. We understand that that governments around the country should be doing, can do, and should look at doing more in this space to provide support for domestic violence, for victims of domestic violence, and we will continue to look at ways in which we can do that, and that does not exclude areas in industrial relations. But there is no position to change the current policy to date. But we will always look at avenues where we can find greater support.
What about the private and non-government sectors? The Fair Work Act expressly provides that leave for victims of crime, which of course includes domestic violence, is left to the states to deal with. Are you going to provide domestic violence leave for those in the private sector?
Well, once again, I would refer to the approach in my previous answer.
Well, which is no.
Which is to inform the committee that the government takes the issue of domestic violence very seriously. We provided more funding and greater funding in this year's budget for providing support for those who suffer issues of domestic violence. We have a specific minister for domestic violence who is an incredibly strong advocate for greater support in this space, and we certainly want to make sure that we are providing programs that assist and not providing an impediment for those people who find themselves in these grave circumstances to not be able to continue, or should not be discriminated against in continuing their work during obviously what could be a period of time of needing to transition out of home or needing some time from work. So we are open to looking at a range of opportunities.
Including extending those rights to the private sector?
That does not exclude. Well, that does not exclude. If there is a provision within the state, we would always look at ways in which we can provide greater assistance. We are providing a range of programs, and there's obviously a whole suite of measures in this space. There is not a panacea, and there never will be, to stopping the scourge of domestic violence. We will always look at ways in which we can assist. We currently, I believe, within this circular, at the very least, at a public sector level, are providing that support because you can get the access to leave in those circumstances. And the fact that Treasury provides this directive and instruction across government is an indication of the seriousness in which we take the matter.
Okay. The Queensland Parliament is on track to legislate to regulate labour hire companies arising from a parliamentary inquiry it held there, and there's been an extensive inquiry in Victoria about regulating labour hire firms in order to provide better protection for their workers. Will you legislate to regulate labour hire firms here in New South Wales, or will you at least examine the issue?
Well, I examine all aspects, Mr. Searle, of my portfolio quite thoroughly.
I haven't had much luck with you so far, Minister.
Really? Well, I examine all aspects of my portfolio quite thoroughly, and if there are opportunities where we can provide greater support for workers across New South Wales, we will, because we have a track record of not just protecting workers, but delivering more jobs across the state. And we have a whole range of programs and initiatives which do just that at whatever stage in the work cycle you are at. But,
No, nothing further.
Okay. Now, there's been a lot of commentary about the need to protect people working in what are called non-standard work arrangements, the so-called gig workers. What plans do you have to make sure that people engaging in work of that form, who are not employees, who fall outside other regulatory models of support, actually have access to things like basic minimum standards of engagement and minimum rates of pay?
Well, I will pass to Mr. Hill to provide further information in relation to that sector of workers, but I just want to go back to the point again that the best thing that we can do from a New South Wales government perspective is to provide the conditions for employment across the state and to grow business and to grow opportunities. That's exactly what we've done. So if you look at the jobs growth since 2011, close to 400,000 jobs, because of 200,000 jobs since 2015, there are more people in work in New South Wales than ever before. Our unemployment rate is the lowest in the nation. And that does not go at the extent of not providing support for people in those roles, regardless where they are. But in terms of the specific sectors you're talking about, I'll pass to Ms. Telfer to provide some further information.
Thanks, Treasurer. As some members of this committee would know, that this has been an issue that's been on the forefront of industrial relations practitioners over the last couple of years, and in fact has been a matter of discussion at the Industrial Relations Society of New South Wales conferences. It would be fair to say that it's an area for those of us who are interested in the policy and regulation of employment or employment-like forms, is to find the right set of arrangements that will suit the changing types of work that are around, the future of work. I think it would also be fair to say that none of us have found the right kinds of levers yet, the right set of arrangements, and it's something that New South Wales, us and those of us in the bureaucracy, talking to our other counterparts across Australia, and particularly with the Commonwealth, and indeed I had a meeting with Commonwealth officials about 6 to 8 weeks ago on this very matter, where we did discuss how we might be able to predict what models might emerge that might be something that we need to discuss further and provide advice, further advice to government. So there is no answer at this point. It is true to say that it is something that all regulators around the country are looking at, but making sure that we've got the right balance of regulation versus being able to make sure that we're not cutting people out of entering into new forms of employment. So not putting unnecessary red tape there in the way, but making sure that we can get the right sorts of regulatory models around, so that if there are people who might otherwise be vulnerable, that they do have protections. I'm sorry, I don't have the answer yet. We are working with our counter regulators.
Okay, well, thank you. Last year, the former minister said in answer to supplementary questions, and I quote, New South Wales government agencies are developing initiatives to implement the government's policy that 100% of public service jobs will be flexible by 2019 on the basis of, if not, why not? Can you please provide the committee with a progress report on how the government is progressing with implementation of that project and how far the process has gone? And can you give tangible examples of changes that have occurred in the last 12 months in particular?
Yeah, well, to level that detail to make sure that we can provide the committee with, I guess, the most detailed progress report.
Happy for you to take it on notice.
I'll be sure to take that on notice, Mr. Searle.
Okay. Minister...
But I would assume a significant amount of progress would have occurred, because if you look at the innovation that we have in the public sector, it's probably world leading. So I would expect that you'll see a strong result when we get that report.
And if not, tell us why not.
Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Shoebridge, with pleasure.
Okay. In relation to the Industrial Relations Commission of New South Wales, are all the members of the Commission performing all of their statutory duties, including dealing with industrial disputes? And I'm happy for you to take that on notice as well.
Yep, I'll take that.
Will the Commission remain at 47 Bridge Street, or does your government still have plans to move it down to the ADT or possibly even the Fair Work Commission?
That's a really interesting question. And the reason it's interesting is because the current location of the Commission is randomly in the same building that the Leader of the Opposition has stated that he would like to move in, his ministry into, in the unlikely circumstance, the incredibly unlikely circumstance that at some stage in the future there may well be
he just wants to be near the governor.
The Labor government. Now, I must say though, the Parks office, Henry Parks' office in that building is exceptional, and it's something that should be preserved into the future. And I remember, I mean, that office is as it was, and if you've been into it, there is a picture on the fireplace of Henry Parks sitting at his office, at his desk, and the office is as it was at that date. Mr. Schubert is getting irritated.
Not to mention the divorce courts; they're beautiful.
The whole building is beautiful. We've made a commitment to keep that to ensure that the Industrial Relations Commission it's obviously operated to the best that it can. No decision has been made, to be direct to your question, in respect of the relocation of the Industrial Relations Commission. What I would say is I've already met with the newly appointed Chief Commissioner. He has raised this issue specifically with me. My position is that you'd certainly want, if the Commission were to move, and a decision has not been made, if it were to move, that it would be moved to a suitable location where it is able to carry out its functions and duties.
So not the ADT?
Well, what's most important, though, is the decision of Mr Foley would certainly not play any part in my considerations in respect of the decision.